Hello everyone! It's so good when companies actually listen to what gamers want and bring a solution to their products that I get super excited whenever something like this shows up. Gulikit claims that their new controller, the King Kong 2 Pro, have magnetic analog sticks. And if this is true, it means that this controller will be drift-proof, at least from potentiometer-based drift. Learn more about that in this video, where I explain how and why drift happens. They also say that this controller has special mechanical face buttons, designed for extended durability. We'll check all of that in this review. Let's start with the unboxing. On top of the Hall effect sticks and mechanical buttons, the King Kong 2 Pro has many extra features, which we will also check out later. They have sent an extra analog stick and a mechanical button. This will make it easier to show how they work in the teardown. Inside this box, you have your traditional USB Type-C cable. And the controller comes with a protective case, which is quite nice. I like the way it looks, especially with that silver touch in the analog sticks and shoulder buttons. And here we have our manual. This is just to show other Gulikit products. And you also get a nice sticker. The controller looks and feels just like an Xbox controller. And when you pick it up, you already feel that the triggers are different. They are very smooth as they don't have any mechanism inside. The plus, minus, and function buttons have rubber membranes for contacts. And you can also feel the difference in the face buttons. They feel like brown tactile keyboard switches, without the clicking noise. The D-pad has a pivot in the center, and it won't trigger all directions when you press it down. You can also pair this controller to 4 different devices at once. A computer with D input, an Android or iOS device, another computer with X input, and a Nintendo Switch. The plastic shell has a soft touch finish, which in my opinion it's really comfortable and feels really good in your hands. In the back you have a grippy texture, similarly to the DualSense controller. And here's the tactile feeling I was talking about before. The buttons have a small travel distance before the activation, and compared with other controllers, they have no travel distance at all. The analog stick has a metal protection to avoid damage on the base of the stick. I have one complaint about the ergonomy though. When playing games, your fingers naturally sit on the triggers, and whenever you need to press the shoulder buttons, you have to move your finger to the front, and in this movement your middle finger starts bumping in the shell. This happens especially because this controller has a recessed back, and the curvature of the triggers is very pronounced, so the bump gets a little bit annoying when you are playing for long periods of time. If you compare it to a Pro controller, you will see that there is no bump at all, and your fingers can easily access both shoulder buttons. The movement doesn't bring any discomfort to the player. Compared to a DualSense, it also has no bumps here. And for a more fair comparison, here's the Vader 2, which also has the Xbox layout. The Vader 2 also has a small bump, but here it is much less pronounced as the King Kong 2. Here's the side-by-side comparison. The back of the Vader 2 is much more thicker than the King Kong's, and thanks to this thicker back, your finger will make a wider curve around the trigger. And in the King Kong 2 Pro, your finger almost wraps around the trigger, giving that weird bump feeling. Moving on to the functionalities, the King Kong 2 Pro can wake up your Switch. And impressively, it has Amiibo support. Not many controllers have this. When you buy this controller, I highly suggest that you do all of the firmware updates in order to get the best experience possible. With the controller updated, let's move on to the performance tests. The analog sticks won't snap to the axis, which is already great to see. And here's something really impressive. With the King Kong 2 Pro, the analog stick has a 0.6% of average error. These analog sticks are super precise. For comparison, let's check the same test with the Pro controller. It's around 3 to 5%. And now with the DualSense controller. It has an even worse performance, with around 8 to 9% of error. And here's why this is important. The circle represents the portion of the analog stick that the game will see. So when you reach the edge here, the game already thinks that the stick is in the corner. But here the stick can go a little bit further, and this little distance here won't be seen by the game at all. Meaning that you have lost a little bit of precision in that particular area. To show another example, here I have a terrible controller. I have to talk about this little guy here later. And who have made this abomination, you might ask? So okay, let's see the average error in this one. You can already see by the movement that the sticks are horrible. Yeah, 20% of average error. And I can say that these are the worst sticks that I ever played with. This whole movement here is unseen by any game. But if you like your sticks to reach all of the way in the corners, you can toggle the sensitivity of each stick individually by holding the gear button and pressing on the analog stick. I don't see any advantage with the high sensitivity mode, but the lower one can be useful for aiming on shooting games. Also notice that there is a little bit of a dead zone here. So you can disable this dead zone too, and have super sensitivity. The tiniest movements will be picked up. You can adjust the rumble intensity. The D-pad is also pretty good, and it passed my test, with the diagonals being easily accessed by holding only on one direction. And you can enable turbo function for these buttons. By repeating the combination, you can toggle the turbo on and off when you press the button. And you can set different turbo modes to different buttons at the same time. If you have set many configurations and want to clear everything out, you can press the gear button and the minus button. If you do the combination with the left shoulder buttons, you will activate the gyro sensor for motion aiming. And repeating the combination will toggle between the low, medium and high sensitivities. You can also switch the face buttons to the Switch or Xbox layouts. If you set up your customizations and turn off the controller, you will forget all of the settings. To have it remember your settings, you should enter the Pro mode using this combination. This way it will always remember your settings even if you turn it off. Also, this controller has the best macro I've ever seen. It captures with precision all of the movements of the analog sticks and buttons. With a single press, it will repeat the macro once. And with a double press, it will keep repeating the macro over and over. I tried doing a macro combo in Smash, but Smash Ultimate is a weird game. It seems that the hit stun changes each time you attack, so the macro never comes out the same. If you look here, the macro recorded is just fine. But at the moment the attacks connect to the opponent, the macro goes crazy. Sometimes changing the attacks completely. But a great use for this macro is doing repetitive tasks, and here's where we reach the apex of automation. And if you made a complex macro and want to save it, you can connect the controller to your computer and just copy the file. By the way, the Gulikit can record macros up to 10 minutes. When you plug it in and do the combination, the controller will show up as a flash drive. You can then enter it and copy your macro. And now let's move on to the Teardown. The Gulikit has a 1000 milliamps battery. The rumble motors and battery plugs are easily removable and replaceable, and you can already see that the triggers are indeed magnetic. In the left side, you'll have this metal shielding here. This shield is to prevent that the left trigger won't interfere with the left stick, as they are really close to each other. The board has golden contact pads for a good conductivity, and here I'll test the analog sticks to see if the metal piece is really resistant. The lower part is plastic and you can easily scratch it. But the base of the stick is different. It is really made of metal and it will have an extra resistance against wear. Now let's take a look at the Hall Effect sticks. They look like normal potentiometer sticks. And they even have the K-Silver brand here. But I believe that's only for the stick box. The part where the potentiometer is usually attached is the Gulikit piece. Here's the stick seen from below. You can see the magnets moving back and forth to register the movements. And if you pick up a screw and put close to it, it is attracted as expected. So this means that the sensor is on the board, probably under it. Comparing to a regular potentiometer stick, you will see that they seem basically the same. But this potentiometer stick, which is from the Alps brand by the way, it communicates to the board by these three legs here. And this means that the green part is actually the sensor. So you can't just grab the Gulikit stick and put it on your Pro controller or your DualSense, sadly, because here the blue part is just the magnet. Now here's the PlayStation 3 stick again. And in this stick you have the magnets and the sensors close together in the same part. The sensor communicates to the board with the forelegs, and the magnet is here on the other side. The sensor piece is not magnetic at all. And this is the main difference between the two. Moving on, the D-pad here has an interesting design. And here's the rubber membranes for the D-pad and function buttons. Now let's check those mechanical buttons. From the outside, they seem like regular rubber membranes. But at the connection of the buttons, it looks like just a mechanical switch. If you put them side by side, it's easy to see how similar they look. So what's the difference here? Before opening the switch, I tried swapping the buttons to see if I could put an Xbox layout, but it didn't go so well. The buttons didn't fit in place. So let's jump into the switch. The tactile feeling of the switch is proportionate by this plastic tab here. If I press on them, you see how hard the button becomes. And if I pull them away, you will see that the buttons lose its tactile feel. It becomes more like a linear switch. If you don't like tactile switches, you can open the controller and mod them to make them look like linear switches. And here's what's inside. The switch works with the spring here, and it's completely made of plastic. So this means that the face buttons are indeed much more durable. Gulikit stated that these buttons will last 50 million presses. And I have no doubts that this is indeed possible. The only rubber part here is the conductive pad, which will last a long time. The trigger buttons are assembled on a metal rod, and it has a spring made of metal too. And the shoulder buttons have a protective rubber to minimize the pressure applied to the switches. And just for fun, here's a live test. I grabbed the magnet and approached it on the sensors to see the response. Now you have no doubts that the Gulikit King Kong 2 Pro have magnetic sticks and triggers, and mechanical switches to the face buttons. No other channel in YouTube showed up the mechanism in such detail as I did. So it really helps me out if you subscribe to my channel and share this video, leave a like or a comment. And my final thoughts on the Gulikit King Kong 2 Pro is that it is a controller built for durability. From the Hall sensing sticks and triggers, to the metal protection on the analog sticks, and the mechanical face buttons. If you are a really hardcore gamer and want a controller that can stand hours and hours of playtime, the King Kong 2 Pro is a good option for you. That's all for this video, and I'll see you next time.